I pulled into the restaurant parking lot 10 minutes early, not on purpose. Traffic was lighter than expected, which gave me more time than I wanted. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, engine humming, hands still on the wheel. The dashboard clock glowed 6:20. Lena had insisted on tonight. She called it a romantic reset. Said we needed to make time for each other again. Said it would help. That she missed me. I wanted to believe that. I think I even tried. But something in her voice lately, or maybe just something in me, had started to itch. The restaurant was new. Fancy. Way trendier than our usual date night spots. Lena picked it. The kind of place where the plates are square and the menu's more adjectives than food. She liked that sort of thing. Said it felt fresh. Said I needed to loosen up. I parked around back and K** led the engine, sitting in silence for a bit. A slow rain had started, dotting the windshield with scattered freckles of water. I could see the glowing interior through the wide pane glass. Dim lights, flickering candles, shadows moving like a play behind a curtain. My palms were damp. I told myself it was just nerves, the same kind I used to get before our early dates, when everything about her still felt new. But that wasn't it. Not really. As I stepped out and headed for the rear entrance, I took the stairs 2 at a time. Not with urgency, just trying to get the night over with. The metal railings were slick. Halfway up, I slowed. Something through the glass divider caught my eye. 2 figures stood near the bar. One of them, unmistakably, was Lena. I stopped. Froze. I hadn't meant to spy, but there was no other word for what I was doing in that moment. Watching her from the outside like a stranger. My wife. She was standing close to a man. Really close. Not friendly close. Not coworker close. Her body tilted inward, her hand resting gently, almost automatically, on his chest. His hand reached up, slow and practiced, and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. That's what hit me hardest. The hair thing. It was so familiar. So mate. The kind of move I used to do before the silences, before the routines. I hadn't touched her like that in, couldn't remember, and her expression. That was the K***LLSH**T. She was smiling, yes, but not in a public way. It was that soft, almost bashful smile. One she used to save for me in private moments, when we danced barefoot in the kitchen or when I made her laugh at something truly stupid. That smile didn't belong to anyone else. But there it was, given freely. He leaned in, just slightly, said something too quiet for me to hear. She tilted her head, laughed. Not loud, but real. Her hand lingered another moment, like she'd forgotten where it was. Then she looked up, saw me. Everything in her body shifted. A twitch in her shoulder, a half step back. Just enough space to make it seem less mate, less real. Her face didn't drop. She was better than that. But something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, panic, recognition. A second later, she was waving at me like I just arrived at a surprise party. I waved back slowly. My heart was jackhammering, but on the outside, I looked composed. That's how we're trained, right? Keep your face calm while your stomach falls into your shoes. She met me at the front entrance with a bright smile, as if nothing had happened. "You're early," she said, looping her arm through mine like everything was fine. "I was just talking to Cody. You remember Cody from work, don't you?" I nodded, barely. "Sure," I said, even though the name meant nothing. Her voice was too cheerful, too sharp around the edges, like she'd rehearsed it. Cody gave me a nod and an apologetic smile, like a waiter caught flirting with the boss's wife, and disappeared through the side door without a word. "Come on," Lena said quickly. "I got us a table by the window. You're gonna love the view." I followed her in. My feet moved. My mouth worked when it needed to, but my mind stayed frozen on the image. Her hand on his chest, that smile, his fingers in her hair. My wife standing in someone else's orbit like she belonged there. The hostess greeted us, and Lena slipped effortlessly into conversation, complimenting the decor, asking about the wine list. I watched her from across the table, trying to find signs in her eyes, in her hands. But she was composed, polished. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that I didn't know how long she'd been rehearsing for this night. For me, for the lie. She poured us wine like nothing had happened. To us, she said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers. The glass sounded hollow. She talked about her day, the office, some new hires, a funny story about a colleague who tripped carrying a tray of iced coffees. I smiled in the right places, laughed when I was supposed to. Every now and then she'd touch my hand lightly across the table like she was proving something, or checking to see if I was buying the story. I wasn't. My appetite had vanished. I cut into the overpriced chicken like I was dissecting it. Meanwhile, Lena talked on about how we should travel more, how she was thinking about taking a weekend off, how she missed the way we used to be. I wondered if she'd said those same words to him. Cody. I wondered if Cody was even his real name. She kept glancing at her phone, quick flicks of the eyes. Habit? Nerves? A message she was waiting on? I couldn't tell. But it didn't matter. I saw enough in those 5 seconds behind the glass to shift something permanent in me. Eventually, the plates were cleared. She insisted on splitting a dessert. We ate half of it in silence, pretending not to notice the growing gap between us. Her hand stayed on her lap. Mine gripped the stem of my wine glass hard enough to whiten the knuckles. When the check came, she reached for it with a laugh. Let me get this one, she said. I owe you a night. I let her. We walked back to the car in silence. She leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to, but I didn't lean back. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't want to break the illusion. I held the door open for her, watched her slide into the passenger seat, still talking about how we should do this more often. My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Not yet. We drove home in near silence, soft music filling the space between us. She hummed along to a song I couldn't name. I kept my eyes on the road. But all I could see was her smile, that soft, secret smile, and the reflection of a stranger's hand brushing her hair aside like it was his to touch. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay on my back in the dark, staring at the ceiling as Lena breathed softly beside me, curled on her side like always, facing away. The room was quiet, but my head was anything but. My mind was a projector reel, looping the same 5 seconds over and over again, her hand on his chest, his fingers in her hair, the way she smiled like the rest of the world didn't exist. I kept telling myself I didn't see enough to know for sure, that I was filling in the gaps with fear, that maybe there was some innocent explanation, something that would make it all make sense if I just asked. But I knew I wouldn't ask. Not yet, because I already knew the answer. I just wasn't ready to hear it from her mouth. Instead, I started rewinding. All the way back. You don't spot the rot when it starts, that's the worst part. It grows quiet, patient. Like mold behind drywall. You only notice it when something smells off. And something had started smelling off months ago. Lena used to be easy to read. That was one of the first things that drew me to her. She wore her feelings on her sleeve, passionate, unfiltered, present. But lately, she'd become harder to reach, like she'd pulled a curtain across her mind and left me standing outside. At first, I chalked it up to stress. She'd just been promoted, working longer hours, bringing her laptop into bed most nights. I thought she was just tired, that it was a phase, that we'd bounce back. But then little things started adding up. The first was her phone. She started sleeping with it face down, a new habit she never explained. At dinner, she used to keep it in her purse. Now it sat next to her plate like an extra guest, always face down, always silent. I joked about it once, something stupid like, "Did your screen forget what the ceiling looks like?" And she just smiled tightly and changed the subject. Then the passwords changed. We never had a policy on that. We weren't the share everything kind of couple, but if she needed my phone to check the weather or I needed hers to look up directions, there were no walls. Until there were. One night, I tried to pull up Spotify on her phone while we were driving, and it prompted for a passcode. I asked her about it, and she laughed it off, said she updated her settings and forgot to add me back. But she never did. Then there were the meetings. At first, they were normal enough: post-work drinks with the team, client events, the occasional Saturday brainstorming session at a cafe. I didn't think much of it, but they started getting more frequent. Less plausible. I'd ask how'd the meeting go and she'd mumble something vague like productive or long. Never details. And always just tired enough to make me feel like a jerk for digging. And the receipts didn't line up. Literally. I started noticing the gaps, times she was out for hours but our bank account showed no transactions. No parking charges, no restaurant tips, nothing. She said work covered it, but her expense reports never matched the timeline. I didn't want to be suspicious. I hated the version of me who noticed these things. But there I was, mentally clocking her trips, scanning our shared calendar for inconsistencies like a detective I never signed up to be. She started spending more time at the spa, too. At least that's what she called it. One Sunday, she came home flushed and relaxed, said she'd gotten a last-minute facial at a place downtown. I asked her which one, thinking maybe I'd get her a gift card for her birthday, and she hesitated for just a beat too long before rattling off a name I didn't recognize. Later that week, I checked our credit card. No charge. She said she paid cash. I didn't say anything. That became a theme, me not saying anything. Swallowing little doubts and letting them stack like bricks inside my chest. I tell myself I was imagining it. That marriages had seasons. That maybe I was the one pulling away and projecting. I even scheduled a therapy session, thinking I just needed to talk it out with someone objective. But I canceled the day before. Some part of me didn't want to say it out loud. Like speaking it would make it real. But the truth was, the signs weren't new. I just started seeing them clearly. Even physically, things had changed. We still had S*X, but it felt procedural, like something to check off a list. Quick, polite, no real eye contact. She used to touch me without thinking. A hand on my neck while I cooked, a brush on the back of my arm when she walked past me in the hallway. Now, she flinched if I touched her when she wasn't expecting it. And then there was the way she spoke about the company. A few months back, she'd started talking more abstractly about what the business needed. She said it needed younger minds, fresher energy, new leadership. I thought she was talking about herself. Ambition was one of the things I admired most about her. But looking back now, it sounded like she was priming me, laying down pieces of a story that only made sense in hindsight. She'd make comments like, "You've been doing this so long. Don't you ever think about stepping back?" Or, "What would it look like if we brought in some new blood?" I'd laugh, tell her I wasn't ready to slow down. She'd smile like I'd just proven her point. And then there were the looks, the ones I caught when she thought I wasn't watching. Moments when she'd stare at me, not with affection, but with calculation. Like she was trying to figure out how to rewrite the story without me in it. Now, all those moments snapped into place like magnets. Her silence, the vague answers, the secret smiles. And Cody, of course. I didn't know the guy, but I knew enough. The way he touched her, the way she looked at him, that wasn't new. That wasn't a first-time mistake. That was comfort, familiarity, rehearsal. Maybe that was the part that gutted me most. Not the possibility that she had cheated, but the likelihood that she'd done it more than once. That I hadn't caught the start of something. I'd caught the middle, the routine, the practiced performance. I rolled over and looked at the back of her head, half buried in the pillow. I used to feel peace watching her sleep. Now I felt like I was lying next to a stranger. Or worse, someone who had stopped seeing me altogether. I didn't confront her. I didn't even speak. I got up quietly, walked to the kitchen, and sat at the table with a cup of cold coffee I didn't remember making. The house was so still I could hear the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of old pipes. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I was done pretending. Something inside me had shifted. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't confused. I was angry, quietly, deeply, coldly, and for the first time in a long while, I felt wide awake. The morning sunlight spilled through the curtains like it had no idea my world was cracking open. Lena was in the shower, her usual Sunday routine. Steam curled beneath the bathroom door, and the sound of water filled the silence with a strange, rhythmic pressure. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, staring at her phone on the nightstand. It was the second phone. The work phone. She said the company had given it to her for team communications. Claimed she hated carrying it and only used it during business hours. But lately, it had been closer to her than her own skin. Always nearby, never left unattended. Until now, she hadn't meant to leave it out. That much was obvious. She'd left in a rush, already late for her facial, or massage, or some other weekly ritual that had become code for don't ask questions. But today she'd slipped. I stood there, staring at the matte black case like it might detonate if I touched it. But I touched it. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second before I tapped it. It lit up. No passcode. She hadn't locked it. Or maybe she had, and then recently disabled it, trusting I'd never try. That part didn't matter. What mattered was the notification banner glowing across the top of the screen. Message from C. Miss you already. I keep thinking about last night. About your skin. About the way you looked at me in the elevator. I want more. Just us. No pretending. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I just stood there, heart racing like I'd sprinted a mile, though my body hadn't moved an inch. There it was, no more breadcrumbs, no more implication. Just a straight *T to the truth. It wasn't emotional distance. It wasn't stress. It wasn't a coworker. It was him. It was her. It was them. And it had been happening right under my roof. I unlocked the phone fully. I don't know what I expected. Guilt, maybe? Shame. But all I felt was cold clarity. The kind that only comes when denial dies and leaves space for something sharper. The app wasn't a regular text thread. It was one of those encrypted messaging platforms she'd claimed she deleted months ago. A privacy thing, she had called it. Said it drained her battery. Said it wasn't worth the hassle. But there it was, sitting on her home screen. Front and center. I tapped the icon and the screen unfolded like a confession booth with no priest. His name was just a letter C, but his words gave him away. The thread stretched back weeks, maybe months. Dozens of messages. Some short and hungry. Others long, thoughtful, in asterisk mate. Not just about S*X, though there was plenty of that. It was the emotional language that punched harder. They talked about how they felt when they were together. What they saw in each other. What they wanted next. And I wasn't part of any of it. I scrolled back until I found the first message. It dated back to late February, almost 4 months ago. See? I can't stop thinking about you. That smile you gave me in the conference room, I've never wanted to kiss someone so badly at work. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Lena. You're dangerous. We can't do this, not here. Not now. But there was a smiley face after it. And he knew what it meant. Because 2 days later, they were meeting for coffee. Then it was drinks. Then late-night work sessions. Hotel reservations. Uber rides timed within minutes of each other. One message in particular stuck out. From just a few nights ago, the same night she claimed she had to stay at the office late due to a server migration. See? Suite 504. I already turned off my phone for the night. Just come straight up. I'll have wine. And you. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the phone still warm in my hand. The air felt thick, like I was breathing through syrup. I stared at the words again, half hoping I'd imagine them. But there they were, mocking me with their casual certainty. This wasn't flotation. This wasn't slipping up at a holiday party and feeling guilty after. This was routine. This was planned. This was Lena carving out a second life while I was trying to patch holes in the first. I kept reading. He called her L. Said he wanted to take her somewhere far away where she wouldn't have to pretend to love someone she didn't recognize anymore. She didn't correct him. She just said maybe someday. Another message. C. Do you think he suspects anything? Lena. Sometimes I think he does. But he doesn't say anything. He's checked out. Just goes through the motions. If he loved me the way you do, I wouldn't be here. That was the one that snapped something in me. Not because she said I was checked out. I'd probably said the same thing to myself a dozen times. But because she rewrote the history of our marriage to justify the affair. Turned my silence into permission. My loyalty into absence. I had never stopped loving her. I just stopped knowing who she was. I placed the phone back on the nightstand the exact way I found it. Screen down. Just like she liked it. The water was still running in the shower. I could hear her humming something off-key, barely audible. The same woman who'd kissed me goodbye every morning, who'd sat beside me on the couch while I massaged her feet, who'd laughed at reruns and handed me pills when I had migraines. That woman was in the bathroom. But she wasn't mine anymore. She belonged to someone else. Or maybe to no one. Just to her own desire. I stood and walked downstairs, careful not to make a sound. My feet moved on instinct, coffee, kitchen, sunlight on tile. Everything looked normal. Everything felt wrong. Like I was trapped in a replica of my life. All the pieces were there, but the soul had been swapped out. When she came down 20 minutes later, wrapped in a robe and towel drying her hair, she smiled. Morning, babe, she said, pecking me on the cheek. Didn't hear you get up? I forced a smile back. Didn't sleep? Too much wine last night? Something like that. She moved around the kitchen like it was any other Sunday. Made toast. Checked her calendar. laughed at a notification on her phone. She didn't look guilty. Or maybe she was just that good. The truth is, people get good at betrayal when they've had time to practice. I watched her butter her toast. The way her hand moved. The way she tapped crumbs off the counter with her fingers. I'd memorized those details over the years, habits, routines, tics. Now they felt like the mannerisms of someone I used to know. Like reading a familiar chapter in a book you no longer love. She glanced up and caught me staring. What? Nothing. You're being weird. Just tired. She nodded, then changed the subject. Something about ordering patio furniture online. I nodded back, saying little. Letting the conversation roll over me like waves I had no intention of fighting. Inside, everything had changed. The doubt was gone. The wondering, the searching, the second-guessing, all dead. In its place was something colder. Heavier. But cleaner, too. Now I had proof. Not just of her betrayal, but of how far she was willing to go to maintain the lie. And if she thought I'd sit quietly in the ruins she built, she didn't know me at all. After that morning, something inside me went silent. Not dead, not numb, just calibrated. Like a switch had been flipped from hurt to aware. The next few days, I went about life as if nothing had happened. I didn't accuse her, didn't bring up the messages. I didn't say Cody's name, even when she casually mentioned a new strategic alignment meeting she had to attend that conveniently ran until after 9 p.m. I didn't flinch when she came home with wind-blown hair and that faint perfume I hadn't smelled in our bedroom in weeks. I played my role. The husband. The steady one. The same old Jackson she'd gotten used to underestimating. Because the truth was, I had no intention of confronting her in the way she expected. No yelling. No, how could you? No thrown dishes or slammed doors. That wasn't my game. I'd built my life, our life, with logic, not emotion. And if she was going to sabotage the foundation we'd poured together, then I'd dismantle the structure with precision. Quiet. Surgical. Without ever lifting my voice. I started where I knew she wouldn't look. The company. Aurora Grid Systems had been our joint venture in theory. A husband-wife team, startup sweethearts, the golden couple of clean tech innovation. But the real backbone, the architecture, the tech, the early patents, the framework that had always been mine. I'd written the first lines of code in our garage. Filed the original patents under my name before Lena ever left her job at Crestwell to join me full-time. We'd done the branding together, the PR, the investor pitches. She was magnetic in a room, I won't deny that. But beneath the surface, I'd always quietly ensured control. It had started as protection. Not from her, from risk. From external partners, buyout attempts, lawsuits, hostile takeovers. So I built in safeguards, ownership clauses, decision gate protocols, a nested structure of access tied to my personal signature. And now, those safeguards would become my scalpel. The first thing I did was audit the access logs. Every user, every credential, every administrative login tied to our core IP. Lena had administrative access to nearly everything, a holdover from the early days when I trusted her with every key. But now I treated that access like a cracked window during a storm. I revoked her privileges in phases, quietly, bit by bit. She still thought she had admin rights. But when she tried to execute key changes, the system would time out, or give her a back-end error, or a redirect. Nothing that triggered alarms. Just slowdowns, glitches. She blamed the new DevOps hire. Perfect. Next, I updated our contracts. We had a dozen active client agreements, government, energy sector, international trade. The legal team had always followed my lead when it came to language, and I made sure of one thing in every new deal: personal performance dependency. It was simple. A clause that stated the delivery of proprietary systems and tech was tied to the named executive lead. Me. Not the company. Not the board. Me. If I walked, they couldn't execute. If someone tried to replace me, the contract terminated. And Lena had never bothered to read the fine print. She skimmed legalese the way most people skim software updates, trusting I had it covered. She was right. I did. Then I went for the financials. I knew something was off. The lifestyle shift. The spa days, the hotel suites, the boutique team dinners. that didn't show up in our ledgers. So I pulled statements, both business and personal, and started piecing together the bleed. She'd set up shell vendors. Small payments, never enough to trigger audits. Consulting fees. Creative service retainers. One of them even billed us monthly for branding optimization. The address traced to a P.O. box downtown. Another was tied to a fake LLC. One I traced through a shared IP to Cody's LinkedIn. Sloppy. I didn't confront her. I just logged everything. Quietly. Discreetly. I even created a private folder on the server. Encrypted, hidden from index search, where I documented every anomaly. Screensh *TS. Timestamps. Copies of messages. Anything that painted the full picture of her betrayal, both marital and professional. Because this wasn't just about her cheating anymore. This was about her trying to cut me out of the company I built. And I had a feeling she wasn't doing it alone. So I watched, listened, waited. That week, she hosted a strategy session at our house. 6 people came, mostly junior staff, and Cody. He showed up late, wearing a blazer and that smug, "I know something you don't" grin I used to mistake for charisma. He shook my hand like we were peers. He poured himself a drink in my kitchen, sat in my chair, spoke like he owned the future. I nodded, offered small talk, even laughed at one of his stories. Lena watched us closely, gauging the tension, I imagine, testing the water. She didn't know I'd already read the script. She thought I was a step behind. I was 3 ahead. After they left, she asked what I thought of the meeting. "Looks like you're building something," I said, sipping my drink. She smiled. "We're all in it together." I just nodded. 2 days later, I met with our in-house legal counsel, under the guise of reviewing our Q2 NDA renewals. I walked her through a new clause I wanted added to all employee contracts, effective immediately. A sunset provision. Any intellectual property created using Aurora tools, codebases, or frameworks remained company property, but only so long as the company was operating under the original corporate charter. If Lena tried to rebrand or spin off Aurora without me, every single asset would vaporize. Then I called our CFO, told him to prepare a contingency reserve, a just-in-case buffer I could pull if we needed to freeze accounts quickly. I didn't tell him why. He didn't ask. Loyalty still exists in pockets. By the end of the week, Lena still thought everything was going to plan. She still smiled when she passed me in the hall. Still kissed my cheek before heading off to strategy brunches. Still believed she had time. But she didn't. I was no longer trying to figure out what she'd done. I was preparing to make sure she couldn't do it again. I wasn't playing defense anymore. This was offense. The invitation arrived on a Wednesday evening, formal, embossed, and far too polished for an internal company event. It was addressed from Lena, but not signed by her. Instead, it was branded under Aurora Future Forward, a name I hadn't heard before, though I instantly recognized it as the seed of something meant to replace me. The event was described as a strategic vision summit, hosted at her uncle's estate, a sprawling place in the foothills, the kind of house with marble floors and a valet even on weeknights, the kind of place people wear ambition like a tuxedo and speak in metaphors about next-level leadership. She hadn't mentioned it. Not once. No heads up. No prep. The fact that I received an invite at all told me one thing. She thought I was already neutered, that I was just one more artifact like the old logo she replaced or the founding story she was now rewriting without me. She wanted me there, yes, but only for appearances, a ceremonial presence, a figurehead. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the last 3 weeks preparing for this exact moment. When the night arrived, I dressed carefully, black on black suit, no tie, no flash. I pulled up to the estate just after 7. The driveway was lined with Teslas and European imports, their headlights flickering like silent paparazzi. Valets in white gloves opened doors and greeted guests by name. I kept my responses brief. Inside, the air smelled like power. Wine, eucalyptus, and polished leather. I saw Lena almost immediately. She was standing at the center of it all, glowing in a deep emerald dress. The same one she wore on our anniversary 2 years ago. I almost laughed. Even now, she was staging the narrative, calling back to memories she'd long since stopped meaning. She spotted me across the room and smiled. Poised, confident, camera ready. She wasn't surprised I showed up. She expected it, wanted it, for optics, for a smooth transition. That was the story, after all, the handoff, the evolution. She'd primed everyone over the past month. Jackson's ready to step back, take a broader role, let fresh talent lead day to day. She'd said it in investor calls, hinted it to the board, even planted it subtly in the internal newsletter. And tonight was the unveiling, the new face of Aurora. His name was Cody Bennett. He stepped up to the podium at 7:45, surrounded by LED screens cycling phrases like "Innovate Forward," "Next Starts Now," and "Engineered Evolution." I stood in the back near the bar, watching the room lean toward him like moths to a tungsten bulb. He spoke with the charm of someone who believed his own pitch. Slick cadence, just the right amount of vulnerability. He used my words: adaptive design, vertical integration, future-proofing. He framed them like they were his own. And Lena stood just behind him, nodding subtly, hands clasped. Her expression said it all: we're here. We've arrived. He's the one. I waited until the applause began to die down. Then I stepped forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't interrupt. I simply moved to the side of the stage and caught the eye of our lead counsel, who was standing near the AV team. She blinked twice, our signal, and walked briskly toward me, folder in hand. Cody noticed first. He faltered mid-sentence as I took the mic he'd just set down. Before we move into the closing reception, I said evenly, I'd like to clarify a few things. There was a polite chuckle from someone up front. A bit of confusion. Lena took one step forward. Jackson, she said, smile fixed, voice tight, we weren't planning to do formal remarks. I know, I said, turning to the crowd. But there seems to have been a misunderstanding about the structure of our company, specifically regarding ownership, leadership, and intellectual property rights. Now the room was quiet. Even the servers paused. I opened the folder. First, I'd like to direct everyone's attention to our original articles of incorporation along with an updated list of active patents filed under Aurora Grid Systems. I held up the page. As you'll see, every core technology we utilize, including the DeltaNet, the Atlas Compression Protocol, and the Open Loop Framework, is owned solely under my name. Not the company's. Not the board's. Not Ms. Miller's. Lena's jaw stiffened. I saw her left hand curl slightly, her nails digging into her palm. I kept going. Furthermore, our active contracts with federal and international clients include binding clauses that designate performance dependency. In simpler terms, none of these deals are valid unless I remain the executive lead. Any transition of operational leadership must be approved in writing by me and must include a full review period of no less than 120 days. Cody stepped forward, trying to recover. Jackson, with all due respect, we're talking about evolution here, progress. This was always part of the plan. What plan? I asked calmly, staring at him. The one you discussed with Lena during off-site meetings? Or the one involving fraudulent vendor contracts billed to shell companies under your name? The room gasped. I turned to the counsel. Would you? She handed me the second folder. These, I said, are invoices linked to fabricated service accounts, each one tied to either Mr. Bennett or an alias used in correspondence from Lena Miller's private email. We're talking about over $400,000 in unauthorized disbursements over an 18-month period. Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the projector screens had gone dark. Lena finally stepped forward, her voice low but steady. Jackson, we should talk about this privately. No, I said, meeting her gaze. You made this public. The takeover. The messaging. The campaign. So we finish it public. She looked around, suddenly aware of how many eyes were now watching her, not admiringly, but warily. Cautiously. Like they were recalculating. Cody tried again. Look, this doesn't have to get messy. We're all professionals here. No, I said. Professionals don't steal. They don't lie. They don't nice trust. Then I turned to the guests. As of this moment, Cody Bennett's contract with Aurora is terminated. He will be escorted from the premises. Lena Miller is suspended from all strategic decision-making pending a full audit. All current development is paused until further review. Lena took a step toward me, eyes burning. You don't get to just erase me. I don't have to, I said quietly. You erased yourself the moment you tried to replace me. There was no applause. No yelling. Just the dull hush of a room watching a mask slide off. Cody was already backing away. A security team, discreet but present, began escorting him through the side hallway. Lena didn't follow him. She stood still, eyes locked on mine, hands at her sides. For the first time in months, she looked unsure. Smaller. Not broken, but suddenly very alone. And me? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. The trap had sprung. The theater was over, the audit was swift and brutal. I authorized a third-party firm, neutral, meticulous, unshakable. What they uncovered shocked even me. 2 years of forged invoices, false vendor profiles, kickbacks disguised as bonuses. Lena hadn't just cheated in marriage, she'd embezzled. $1.5 million, siphoned piece by piece. The board convened within 72 hours. I presented the findings without emotion. Lena was removed, not just from leadership, but from every system, every asset, every thread of control. Cody vanished, resigned via email. His office left trashed, his laptop wiped. They had tried to rewrite the future. Instead, they deleted themselves from it. A year later, Aurora thrived, restructured, global, stable under my sole leadership. I relocated to Denver, opened a new HQ, and hired Ellie, a laser optics engineer with clarity in her mind and none of Lena's shadows. We clicked slowly, carefully. One afternoon, Lena appeared in the lobby. Smaller some.